The road outside Birmingham, Alabama was almost silent. Streetlights flickered overhead, casting long shadows on slick pavement still glistening from a late evening drizzle. A jazz tune hummed low through a pair of car speakers. Behind the wheel, Lieutenant Commander Renee Dawson tapped her fingers on the steering wheel to the rhythm. Steady, controlled, like the beat of a soldier's heart before a mission. She wasn't in uniform. Just jeans, a plain black sweater, and her hair pulled back in a tight knot. She looked like any other woman trying to get home before midnight. She thought that made her invisible, but power never misses a chance to announce itself. In the rearview mirror, red and blue. Gaining fast, no siren, just pressure. Renee's stomach didn't drop from fear. It dropped from exhaustion. She had driven nearly 2 hours after a family visit, just wanting to make it back to base. She blinked slowly, flicked on her signal, and pulled her car to the shoulder with practiced ease. She placed both hands on the wheel. She knew the drill. The white patrol car stopped behind her. No urgency in the way the door opened. No rush in the officer's stride. Just boots hitting asphalt with the slow confidence of someone used to being obeyed. A flashlight flicked on. A beam hit her mirror. She turned slightly, just enough to see his face. His badge caught the light. Briggs. License and registration. No greeting, no explanation. Just a tone that expected immediate compliance. Renee reached slowly. Glove box, wallet, practiced movements. "Was I speeding, officer?" Her voice was even, tactful, controlled. Briggs didn't answer. He held her documents loosely in one hand, letting his eyes scan her car with casual suspicion. Taillights out, she frowned. "That can't be right. It was just checked." He cut her off. "Are you arguing with me?" That pause, the kind that changes the air in a room or the side of a highway. A pause between rights and rules. Renee didn't flinch. "I'm not arguing. I'm saying I'll get it fixed if there's a problem." Briggs stepped closer. "Step out of the car." Renee blinked. "Mind telling me why?" His smirk didn't reach his eyes. "Because I said so." She knew what this was. She'd seen it in deserts, across oceans, in rooms full of men who thought power was something you wore on your chest. Still, she moved, deliberate, calm. Outside, the air was cool. The road, empty. Hands on the car. "For what reason?" Briggs took one more step. "Are you resisting?" "No," she replied, her voice steady. "I'm asking a question." He reached for his radio. "We got a non-compliant driver." And just like that, it changed. She could feel it, the weight of assumption. The script he had already written for her. Disrespectful, aggressive, threat. "I know exactly what you're allowed to do," she said quietly. "And what you're not." Briggs didn't like that. "You're under arrest." His hand reached for her wrist. She stepped back. "Under arrest for what?" "Obstructing an officer." The words meant nothing, but the cuffs were real, cold. Steel bit into her wrists, too tight, intentionally tight. He shoved her toward the back seat. "You don't know what you're doing," she murmured. Briggs chuckled. "Lady, I know exactly what I'm doing." But he didn't, not even close. The patrol car's hard plastic seat pressed uncomfortably against Renee's back. Her wrists, cuffed tightly behind her, throbbed with every bump in the road. The metal bit into her skin like it had been tightened out of spite, not protocol. She stared straight ahead, her breath slow, methodical. Control the breathing, control the mind. That's what they taught her in SEER training and in combat. And in every moment where panic would only get you killed, this wasn't combat, but the rules were the same. From the front seat, Briggs whistled, low and off-key, like he was soundtracking his own power fantasy. "Well, well," he muttered. "You military types really think the rules don't apply to you, huh?" Renee said nothing. Briggs glanced at her in the rearview mirror, smirking. "That's what this is, right? Thought I'd take one look at your tags and back off?" Still, silence. He snorted. "Yeah, figured as much. Got that look, that you can't touch me vibe. Guess what? I just did." The red and blue lights above the car still flickered, casting bursts of color over the pavement behind them. In the reflection, Renee caught a glimpse of her own face, calm, unreadable. But beneath that stillness, a fire had already been lit. The squad car pulled into the station lot, squat, gray, and half-lit. A skeleton crew was inside, judging by the empty rows of parked cruisers. Briggs swung the car into a space near the entrance like he owned the place. He turned to glance at her through the glass. I gotta say, I do love when they make it easy. She didn't flinch. He exited the car and slammed the door shut. A moment. Later her door opened. Let's go. She stepped out carefully. Her balance was fine, but the cuffs were still too tight. She didn't mention it. She didn't ask. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction. He led her past a bored-looking desk sergeant who barely lifted his eyes. The smell of old coffee and industrial-grade floor cleaner filled the air. Familiar. She'd walked through places like this on tours abroad. Places where power hung stale in the air like smoke. Booking, fingerprints, mugshot, mechanical. Uncaring. The officers at the desk didn't speak more than a few words. They didn't ask questions. Didn't seem to wonder why a woman in a plain black sweater with the bearing of a military officer was being walked through like a petty thief. They didn't care. Briggs didn't ease up. When the booking was done, he grabbed her wrist again. Rough, deliberate, and marched her toward the holding cells. You think you're smart, huh? He muttered. She looked sideways. I don't have to think. He yanked the door open and shoved her forward. She caught herself before stumbling. He wanted her to stumble. She didn't give him that. The cell door clanged shut behind her. She turned slowly and sat down on the metal bench, back straight. The light above flickered, casting harsh shadows across the wall. Cold seeped through the concrete floor. Briggs leaned on the bars. You know, if you'd just played along, you'd be home by now. She looked up. I'm exactly where I need to be. That hit something. His smirk faltered. Not completely, but enough. He pushed off the bars. No one's coming for you tonight. He walked away, boots echoing down the hallway. Renee leaned back against the wall. Let her head rest for just a second. Let her mind stretch. He thought this was the end of her night. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't possibly imagine, was that she had already taken control of this story the moment she stepped out of the car. He had his cuffs, his badge, his bravado. She had something sharper. She had the truth, and the right people would hear it. Sooner than he thought. The holding cell was cold, not freezing, not unbearable. Just the kind of cold that seeps into your joints and makes time feel heavier than it is. Renee shifted slightly on the metal bench, rolling her shoulders, adjusting to the ache. The light above her flickered again, barely a hum but constant, like a tick on the edge of perception. The walls were concrete gray, the air stale. Nothing about this space was designed to hold dignity, but Renee still had hers. Across the station, the low hum of conversation drifted in and out. Paper shuffling, coffee cups clinking, a world moving without urgency. She focused on her breathing. Then, boots. She didn't need to look. She recognized the stride. Briggs. Same rhythm, same ego. He stopped in front of the cell, arms crossed, posture cocky. That familiar smirk returned like a reflex. Comfy? He asked. She didn't answer. He leaned in slightly. You know, if you'd just played along, you wouldn't be in here. She met his eyes. Calm, steady. Oh, I'm exactly where I need to be. That made him pause, only for half a second. But it was there. A flicker of something. Confusion? Unease? He scoffed, trying to brush it off. No one's coming for you, lady. He turned to leave, but then stopped. A younger officer had appeared down the hallway, mid-20s, clean uniform, clipboard in hand, nervous posture, eyes flicking between Briggs and the cell. Sergeant? Briggs didn't turn. What? The officer hesitated. We got a call. Then take a message. It's not that kind of call. Briggs finally faced him. Spit it out. The younger man lowered his voice, but Renee caught. Enough. Someone asked about the detainee. Someone high, real high, legals on hold. I think you need to see this." Briggs's jaw tightened. He gave Renee one last glance, sharper now, no longer amused, then stormed down the hallway. She listened. Hushed voices, paper rustling, an unmistakable change in tone. Briggs, lower now, defensive, irritated. The younger officer, stammering, words floated back. "Lieutenant Commander, Naval Intelligence. Civilian lawsuit risk." When Briggs returned, his walk had changed. Still that swagger in his shoulders, but his hands were clenched. His jaw set. His smirk, gone. He stepped up to the bars again, this time without leaning. "What the hell did you do?" Renee leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. "I didn't do anything." She tilted her head. "But people talk. And some of us have friends in very high places." He didn't answer right away, just stared, not at her sweater, not at her face, at her poise, at how little she seemed shaken. Briggs muttered something under his breath and turned away again, this time with less certainty in his stride. Renee leaned back. The air didn't feel as cold now, not because the room had changed, but because power had started to shift. Not loud, not fast, just enough to notice. Morning light filtered through the courthouse windows, casting long streaks across the polished marble floors. The cold inside wasn't just from the air conditioning, it was institutional, ancient, the kind of chill that carried weight. Lieutenant, Commander Renee Dawson stood beside her attorney at the defendant's table, posture poised, tailored navy blazer sharp against the sterile backdrop. No handcuffs, no jumpsuit. Just presence. Carla Whitman, her attorney, flipped casually through a stack of papers, her movements calm, precise. No wasted energy. At the other side of the courtroom, the heavy wooden doors swung open. Briggs entered. Same squared shoulders. Same arrogant lift of the chin. But something had changed. His gait was stiffer now. His eyes scanned the room quickly, landing briefly on Renee, before darting away. He didn't smirk this time. He couldn't. The judge entered, an older man with a weary expression and thick glasses. He settled into his seat and glanced over the files. "Let's get to it," he said, voice even but firm. The prosecutor stood. A man in his 50s, silver at the temples, crisp suit. "Your Honor, we believe the defendant, Lieutenant Commander Renee Dawson, was unlawfully detained without probable cause." Briggs shifted. "Furthermore," the prosecutor continued, "we have new information indicating a pattern of misconduct involving the arresting officer, Sergeant Daniel Briggs." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The judge looked up over his glasses. "Sergeant Briggs, care to respond?" Briggs cleared his throat and leaned forward. "The defendant was uncooperative during a routine traffic stop. I followed procedure." The prosecutor lifted a document. "Uncooperative?" He turned it so the court could see. "Lieutenant Commander Dawson has a spotless military record. Graduate of the Naval Academy. Multiple commendations. No citations. No history of violence. Are you telling us she was such a threat you had to arrest her over a taillight?" Briggs opened his mouth, then shut it. The prosecutor didn't wait. "We've also reviewed Sergeant Briggs's recent arrest records. There's a disturbing pattern. A disproportionate number of stops involving black drivers, particularly women, within this district." The murmurs grew louder. Briggs's jaw flexed. The judge raised a hand. "Let's see the footage." A screen lowered, lights dimmed, and there it was. Briggs on camera, his voice sharp, dismissive, demanding. Renee calm, composed, asking questions, not resisting. The smirk, the escalation, the cuffs. The room was silent when the video ended. Judge Kirkland leaned forward, fingers steepled. "Sergeant Briggs," he said slowly, "you violated protocol. You made an arrest without sufficient cause, and your initial report failed to mention several key details. Details this footage makes painfully clear." Briggs tried again. "Your Honor, the charges against Lieutenant Commander Dawson," the judge continued, raising his voice slightly, "are hereby dismissed." The gavel came down, sharp, final, "and I strongly recommend an internal investigation into Sergeant Briggs's conduct." A new wave of murmurs, from the gallery, from Reporters scribbling faster now. Briggs sat frozen, red-faced, jaw tight, hands clenched at his sides. He looked like a man who'd just been unmasked in front of a crowd he thought would always cheer for him. Renee gathered her things, calm, deliberate. As she stood, she looked at him, just once. No words, just presence, and this time, he was the one trying to hold his head high as he stormed out of the courtroom. But the hallway felt colder now, because power had shifted, and it wasn't going back. The courthouse hallway was quiet except for the echo of Briggs's heavy footsteps. He moved fast, shoulders tense, jaw clenched, barely acknowledging the people he passed. Court staff, officers. A few reporters huddled near the exit, whispering, scribbling. He could feel their eyes. He wasn't used to that. He was used to being the one who walked through the room and made others uncomfortable. Now, he was the one trying to escape. Sergeant Briggs. The voice came sharp, cutting through. The marble corridor. He turned. Chief Eldon Baker stood a few feet away, arms crossed, expression unreadable. The man had been on the force for over 30 years. Respected, feared, and very rarely involved in small cases like this. Briggs straightened. Sir. The chief gave a single nod. Follow me. They moved down the hall to a small side office. The door closed with a dull thud behind them. Baker didn't offer a chair. What the hell were you thinking? Briggs stiffened. I was doing my job, Baker scoffed, tossing a thick manila folder onto the desk. That's not what it looks like from here. Briggs said nothing. Baker tapped the folder. Body cam footage, arrest logs, complaint records. Internal Affairs is already digging through all of it. You've been flagged. Flagged. Effective immediately, you're suspended. Briggs blinked. Suspended? The chief's tone didn't waver. Pending a full investigation. And if they find what I think they're going to find, he leaned in. Your career is over. Briggs's face flushed. Sir, she was disrespectful. She questioned. That's not a crime. She pushed back. These types? Baker snapped. His voice didn't rise in volume, but it cut like steel. You don't get to type people anymore, Briggs. That's the problem. Briggs tried again. She made a scene. And now the media saw the same footage I did, Baker interrupted. And you know what they saw? They saw a man with a badge escalate a minor stop into a wrongful arrest. They saw a woman stay calm while being humiliated. And they saw you, Sergeant, as exactly what the public fears most. Briggs stared at the desk. The chief didn't let up. You didn't even know who you were arresting. You didn't care. That woman was a decorated Navy officer. She could have been anybody. You treat civilians like that? How many others haven't made it to court? Silence. The chief stood tall. The district attorney is reviewing every single arrest you've made in the last 5 years. Racial profiling, excessive force, unreported stops. You're under a microscope now. Briggs swallowed. This is bull. Don't finish that sentence, Baker snapped. You don't get to be the victim here. Briggs clenched his fists at his sides. Pack up your desk, the chief said, turning toward the door. And if I were you, I'd find a good lawyer. He didn't wait for a reply. The door opened and closed. Briggs stood alone in the office. The silence was louder than anything he'd heard all day. For the first time, the badge on his chest felt like a weight he couldn't carry anymore. And worse, he realized it might never be his again. The cafe was quiet. Late afternoon sun streamed through the windows, casting golden rectangles across the tiled floor. The low murmur of conversation, the clinking of silverware, and the hiss of an espresso machine filled the space with a gentle, living warmth. Renee sat by the window, fingers curled around a warm ceramic mug. The coffee had gone lukewarm, but she didn't mind. She scrolled slowly through her phone. Headlines were already popping up. Lieutenant Commander wrongfully detained. Officer under investigation. Body cam footage goes viral. Abuse of EU. Power or systemic problem? She took a slow breath. Not satisfaction, not revenge, just release. Her phone buzzed. A message from Carla Whitman. Briggs has been suspended. IA is digging deep. It's starting. Renee stared at the text for a moment, then locked the screen and placed the phone face down. Outside the window, a mother walked by with a stroller. A teenager zipped past on a bike, earbuds in, head bouncing to some internal beat. Life moved on, but inside her, something had shifted. It wasn't pride. It wasn't relief. It was certainty. This wasn't just about her. She thought about every person who had sat where she had sat, wrists in cuffs they didn't deserve. People without the rank, without the legal team, without the voice. And now, someone had heard her phone buzzed again. This time, a familiar number she answered. Lieutenant Commander Dawson. Captain Harlan, came the voice on the other end. Steady, familiar. I assume you've seen the news. I have. A pause. And how are you feeling? He asked. Renee looked at her reflection in the cafe window. Straight posture, clear eyes, not hardened. Just aware, like I did exactly what I was supposed to do. That's what I thought you'd say, the captain replied. His tone softened. The Department of Defense is taking interest. Don't be surprised if someone asks you to speak on this. Renee exhaled quietly. Not sure I'm interested in being a headline. You already are. Another pause. What happened to you, he continued, is part of something bigger. And you've handled it with professionalism and grace. The Navy sees that. Civilians see it. It matters. Renee let the words settle. She didn't respond right away. The fight wasn't over. But today was a win. Understood, sir. One more thing, the captain added. You might be getting a call from the mayor's office. Renee raised an eyebrow. Really? They want to recognize you. Some kind of formal acknowledgement, she smirked. Now that's ironic. The captain chuckled on the other end. You going to accept it? I'll think about it. She ended the call and tucked the phone back into her coat pocket. The sun had dipped a little lower. The cafe glowed softer now. Across the street, a young boy was tugging at his father's sleeve, pointing at a dog in a storefront window. Renee watched them quietly. She hadn't fought just for herself. She'd fought for the ones who hadn't gotten back up, for the ones whose names never made the paper, and maybe for that boy too. Because the system doesn't change on its own. It shifts, only when someone refuses to back down. The sidewalk outside the cafe had grown busier. Afternoon light softened into gold, stretching shadows across the street. Renee stepped outside, letting the door swing gently shut behind her. The air smelled faintly of rain and something blooming. Across the road, a young boy skipped beside his mother, their hands linked. He pointed at something in a storefront, laughing. She watched them for a moment. No one looked back. No one saw a headline. Just another woman standing quietly, hands in her coat pockets, taking in the day. Voiceover begins, slow, thoughtful, steady. As if from Renee herself. I didn't step out of that car to make a point. I stepped out because I was tired of being talked over, dismissed, assumed. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't push back. I didn't need to. Because I knew who I was, and I knew he didn't. She walked to the corner waiting for the crosswalk light. A car rumbled past. No one stared. No one stopped her. I fought because too many others can't. Because too many names get lost in sealed files and forgotten cases. Because not everyone wears rank on their collar or carries proof in their resume, the K. Light changed. She crossed. Power unchecked becomes power abused. And that night he thought his badge made him untouchable. But power doesn't come from a badge. It doesn't come from a title. She reached the other side, pausing near a bus stop bench where a teenage girl sat with a backpack, scrolling through her phone. Real power comes from knowing who you are. When someone tries to convince you that you're not, it comes from staying steady when the world tries to shake you down, and sometimes it comes from being quiet enough to let the truth speak louder than anger ever could. Renee kept walking. A man passed her, nodding politely. She nodded back. She didn't wonder what he thought of her. She didn't need to. I didn't want to become story, but some stories don't get written unless someone lives them out loud, and maybe Maybe if enough of us stop shrinking ourselves to make others comfortable, the next woman won't need to explain why she didn't smile during a traffic stop. The next mother won't have to fear what tone of voice her son uses when he says, "Why?" Renee stopped outside a bookstore. A flyer was taped to the window: Community Talk, Justice and Reform. Guest speaker TBD. She smiled. "I'm not here to be celebrated. I'm here to make sure this doesn't happen again. And if it does, that someone's watching." Her phone buzzed once. A new message. She didn't open it right away. The truth is, this was never just about me. It never is. It's about what happens when silence is no longer an option. And what shifts when one woman decides she's had enough. Voiceover ends. Renee turned from the window and walked on, not away from the moment, but toward whatever came next, head high, step steady, because this fight was never hers alone. It never had been.